Welcome to In Session on the Eating Disorder Spotlight Podcast.
Today in session, I want to talk about food rules. If you've been in a session with me or somebody dealing with disordered eating, you've probably talked about food rules. And they are the food stories in our heads that tell us what we should and shouldn't eat. And if you have disordered eating, if you have an eating disorder, your food rules are likely very loud and they probably are complicated. They might be a bit obsessive. They might be based on a lot of different sources. And chances are they are going like a thought loop in your head over and over and over again. So I have a tool that I thought I would just walk us through that I use with my clients. And I stole my tool from this fabulous book. If you're listening, it's the 8 Keys to Recovery workbook. And it's from Carolyn Costin, who is a huge trailblazer in eating disorder treatment. She has a book and a workbook, and she has it in here. And she has some great resources in here. I also use her 10 conscious eating guidelines all the time. But she has a great food rule activity. But for the short attention span folks like myself, I made it into one page. Hers is, I think, 2 pages. It's a little bit longer and more drawn out, and there's more questions on hers. So for the full option, you can go to this. But mine, on the other hand, is just 1 page. And if you can see that, I don't know if that's going to show up. So I have 7 questions. And let's just talk through it. Let's pretend like you're in session and we're talking about food rules. Because if we do not identify what the heck are food rules, we can't be aware of when they're showing up and causing trouble. And if we can't challenge them or know what to do when they show up, we're just going to keep following them. And maybe some are okay. We're going to talk a little bit about how there's preferences and then there's food rules. And depending on why you have the rule or whether it's a preference or an eating disorder thing, that might have a lot to do with whether or not we keep the rule. So the first thing we have at the top of this one is identify some rules, some food rules. There's lots of them out there. I think I'll run with one that I hear often, which is no added sugar. That's a big one I've heard from a client the other day. So food rules can be anything from I don't eat white flour, I don't eat past 6 o'clock, I don't eat foods at all that are carbohydrates, I don't eat preservatives, which might be orthorexia or anorexia, I don't eat meat. Who knows what your food rules are? But chances are you got a lot of them. We all have them. We all have things we say to ourselves we do and don't like. So let's say we're just going to go with the food rule today is no added sugar. And I'll try to do more of these on other food rules because I just picked that one randomly. And I don't know if I'm going to love picking it, but here we go. So the reason for the rule, the first thing I ask a client is, why do you have this rule? Where did it come from? A lot of times I'll get a blank stare where they're like, well, and they'll think and they'll say things like, well, that's just true, isn't it? Everybody knows that. Or I think I've heard that a lot. Or I've always believed that. Or my coach says it. Or my mom's always said that. Or when I was on TikTok, everyone's been talking about how we're supposed to stay away from seed oil or whatever the fear is. The other reason for the rule that we dig into after we figure out why you have a rule is what that rule does for you. So in this case, we go a little deeper. And the reason for the rule in this client's case is, yes, I heard from other people added sugar is bad, but I heard it's bad because it's supposed to change the way my body is, because it's supposed to make me have too much sugar, which is supposed to make my body bigger than it's supposed to be. See how it keeps going? So we go really deep. We figure out really what is your food rule. It's not so much about added sugar, it's what added sugar is going to do. So you're afraid that added sugar is going to result, here's the ED part, in you gaining weight. Let's just assume that's your concern with added sugar. And if you avoid added sugar, your body won't gain weight and you'll stay the same size. Now, for all these food rules, if you're listening and you go, well, I don't have anorexia and I don't see that's a problem. Well, there's a big difference between having a disordered eating brain and having a brain that is not disordered. There's probably still some disorder in that if you're totally avoiding food, but you might just say, I'm going to try to not have too much added sugar here and there. And you might kind of keep an eye out and it might not ever make any impact. You'll get the same nutrition. You'll feel really good. You'll eat the same stuff. You'll go out with your friends. No one will care. If you have an eating disorder and you try to have a food rule, it takes over everything. It is so loud that your friends are going to hear it. You're going to hear it. It's going to interrupt meals. It's going to create a nutrition problem. It's going to get so loud that everything you're about to do related to food is going to annoy you and others. And chances are you have many of these. So imagine if you have 25 food rules and you're standing in front of a menu trying to figure out what to eat. That's exhausting. Your poor brain's going 24/7. And you might avoid a lot of these settings. You might avoid eating and those foods altogether, which is going to make it hard for you on a social setting as well. So the reason for the rule is I've heard added sugar is bad, but at the end of the day, I also believe that I shouldn't gain weight. The next question is, how long will I follow the rule? So this is kind of posing of, what is this rule intention? Is it just for the next week because you feel like you got home from vacation and you had a lot of sugar? I'm not saying that's a good decision, but maybe. Is it because you're worried that in 50 years your heart's going to be challenged because of added sugar? Like, how long are you going to follow it? And often I will hear from the anorexic brain, well, I mean, forever. Or occasionally I will hear, I'm going to follow it until my body is the way I want it. Which, if you are the non-disordered person listening and you're scrutinizing, maybe you can do it. But I will assure you that the eating disorder brain cannot do that, because they will never have the body they want and they will never be done. So we look at, how long is this thing going to play out? Then we look at, what happens if I break the rule? So let's say I said no added sugars, and I am at a family party, and let's say my Nana brought homemade something or other that she makes, and I don't know what she put in it, chocolate chips and other stuff, and you don't know what it is, and you eat it. Or you go out with friends and you get something, you get an ice cream cone at, I don't know, McDonald's or something. You don't know what's in it, and you've technically broken your rule. Well, a lot of times what I'll hear from clients is, if I break the rule, I'm going to feel horrible. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to worry about it. I'm going to shame myself. I'm going to wish I didn't do it. I'm going to start body checking and seeing how that affected me. I'm going to change my next meal or what I do next based on the fact that I had some added sugar. I might even over or increase movement. Once we see this food rule creating all this backlash from breaking it, we know that that food rule is bogus, and we know it's disordered. If you had added sugar and you don't have an eating disorder, and you were just like, oh, yeah, so it would be a whisper. It may not even be a sound. You just keep on going. So there's added sugar in it. All right, whatever. But if you keep going and talking about it and worrying about it and changing your behaviors and altering what you do later, that's disordered. And we need to know that. We need to know that when you break this rule, there's a problem. That's, again, giving us that red flag that this food rule is a problem. Is your rule based on fact or fear? In a court of law, can you prove, with all the information you might think you have, that added sugar is bad for you? Now, there are sites that are going to tell you everything's bad for you. You can prove what you want just about anywhere, but you can also disprove it. And have you really dug deep, find out the real truth? Is anyone really telling you at the end of the day what potassium sorbate is going to do to your liver in 40 years? There are no studies for that. No one can really tell you what's wrong with added sugar. Nobody can connect added sugar to diabetes. There is not a direct causal connection there. There might be some mitigating factors for somebody who already has a predisposition, but it is not because of the added sugar we're talking about here. So you're probably going to struggle with a disordered food rule, giving it a fact-based reason. It's going to be hard. Most of my clients, because they're logical still in their brain, can say, it's fear. I'm afraid of it. I think it's bad. I don't want to gain weight. I don't want a body that's unhealthy. And yet, we don't have any facts to back that up. We've got some social media stories. We've got a few celebrities saying things. We've got some threads about information. We've got what the health teacher told us in 7th grade. So a lot of times we decide, this is fear-based. Now, there could be some facts. There could be. There are some food rules where there's some facts lying in there somewhere. Great example is intermittent fasting. If you have disordered eating, don't even listen. You can't. You're just not allowed. It doesn't work for your body. It will not work. But there are some data for short-term intermittent fasting. You can find data that talks about your glycemic index, your heart health, and in certain smaller intermittent sessions, like the 8 to 12 hours, even up to 16, there's some efficacy, some, depending on what you read. But if you have disordered eating, none of it applies to you. So there can be some facts in there, but are they your facts? And are you spinning them just so they feed your food rule? Do I think other people should follow my rule? So I'll look at my clients and say, should I not eat any added sugars? Because quite honestly, until my client came in and told me about this, I'm like, what the hell is an added sugar? I'm like, is that the sugar I put in my coffee? God, everything's pink today. And no, I guess it's like when they put more sugar in for stuff to taste good. And I understand we live in a world that wants us to get our dopamine from sugar and salts and MSG, and they give us lots and we want more of it. I understand that. And we can argue that another day, how we deal with that. But that is the world we live in. And when I go to the snack bar, or I go to the pool snack bar, or I go to the cafeteria, or I go to a party, some of those foods are going to have added sugar. And if you avoid all of those foods, you are restricting. And if you have an eating disorder, you don't get to restrict. So once I figured out added sugars was that, I was like, okay, am I supposed to avoid them? And some clients will be like, well, we all should. Some of my very black and white absolute thinkers will be like, no one should have those. I'm like, oh, sounds horrible. You're turning down so many foods. But then some clients will agree and think about it and say, well, it depends on what your situation is. And then when we go deeper, we realize that there's no fact. They can't find the factual reason why I or they should or shouldn't follow this food rule. The other thing about other people following the food rule might come down to they'll say things like, well, I believe it for everyone but me. I believe everyone can eat whatever they want, but I can't because I don't deserve to, because I have to follow certain rules, because I'm going to become a binge eater. So there's a lot of different responses I might get for this, but it's worth thinking about. Why is it okay for you to not touch anything all your friends are eating, but they can? Finally, is my rule flexible? The more flexible a rule, the less disordered it is. So if you're like, yeah, as long as I'm not at home, I'll eat whatever I want. I still don't love that because there's still restriction in that, but it's flexible. Flexible also means when I eat the added sugar, I don't beat myself up. I don't negotiate it. I don't try to rationalize it. I don't try to change behaviors because of it. Flexible means I ate it and it's okay. So if you eat Nana's thing I was describing earlier, her cookie or whatever, and it doesn't bother you because it's Nana's and you know you eat Nana's cookie and you would never hurt Nana's feelings and it's okay, it is still a food rule, but you've given it a little bit of growth, a little bit of movement. That's huge. A lot of my clients' food rules are absolute. I do not do it. And if I do it, there's going to be hell to pay. And then finally, we go over what is there to gain or lose. There's a reason they're doing it, just like there's a reason your eating disorder has benefited you probably in some way. So there's a benefit. What's the benefit? Because you don't feel like you'll gain weight, maybe. Maybe it's because for some people, they feel like they're giving their body what it wants. They're paying attention. They're being mindful. For other people, it might be they're feeding their need for control. There's a lot of benefits that come out of some of the things we do that may not always be good for us. An eating disorder came around for a reason. But what does it cost? So we look at, what did it cost you? Did you end up sitting here having to talk to me? Okay, there's that. Did it cost you nutrition? Did it cost you being able to play a sport? Did all these food rules get in the way of relationships? Are you having trouble sitting at home eating dinner with your family? What is the cost to your cognitive brain? How much of a narrative is going through your brain about your food rules all the time? How hard is it to make a decision about food? There's a lot of sort of intrinsic, subtle, and obvious cost to some of these food rules. So this was just one food rule. I'm going to bring others back. But the idea is when you have a rule about food, you really need to know where it's coming from. You need to beat it up and be sure why you have that rule. I'll do another one later about a valid food rule, which would be something like, I don't eat flour because I have celiac disease. There's a lot of fact behind that, and we can really back that up. We can start with the reason why, and it can make sense. So all food rules are not wrong, but we need to look at where they come from. And if you have disordered eating, if you have an eating disorder, you do not get to have food rules because they're dangerous. They're really dangerous because most of them will not stay in their own little category. All right, food rules it is. Thanks for listening to this in session. Peace.